Hello and welcome back. This is Roger Royce with the 10,000 Startups podcast. I'm a partner with Haynes Boone Palo Alto. I do emerging growth and venture capital. And each week we bring you original content on legal issues of interest to startup entrepreneurs. And this week we're going to continue our theme of international issues. We're talking to Liza Mark. She's a partner and Chief Representative and Shanghai Office Managing Partner with Haynes Boone. She's been there since 2013 and has concentrated her practice in private equity investments, securities, and cross-border M&A in the U.S., Hong Kong, and Shanghai. She's very qualified to help companies that are trying to manage going into China or coming from China into the U.S. or other types of cross-border investment and M&A activities, not only in the U.S. but also in Europe. So Liza, thanks for being here. And why don't we kind of jump right into it and to talk about the topic here today, of course, is doing business in China, legal issues, which is always a big topic, always a huge topic. But let me kind of start with the fundamental question, because I've been reading the papers and I've been hearing rumors. You're there in Shanghai, so what is the current economic climate in China?
Sure, Roger. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. The current economic climate is, frankly, not that great. There is a lack of confidence in the economic activity. There's a lot of dry powder. There's just money coming out of everybody's ears, basically sitting there. But not a lot of people have the confidence or the clarity to execute on deals. So you see that deal flow has significantly circumscribed. And a lot of people are waiting for the central government to make a signal. Now, recently, before the October 1st holiday, the central government has made one monetary signal, and the Hong Kong capital markets and the China capital markets went crazy, right? But then the investors were waiting for the fiscal signal to come down. And up till now, we're middle of October, and the fiscal signal hasn't been kind of like announced yet. So the public markets have receded back, and everybody's sort of holding their breath, waiting for the Chinese government to kind of say, hey, this is the amount that we're going to plonk into the economy to support it. I think everybody expects that the Chinese government will plonk in some money. It's just nobody knows how big it is and whether there's going to be structural reform that will come with the injection of capital and both the monetary and the fiscal policies. And as you know, the Chinese economy is very, very government driven. So until the Chinese government puts the word down, right, everybody else is like, well, I'll wait until I know where the wind is blowing before I'll make my decision and place my bets.
Gotcha. I've been reading in the papers that a lot of law firms have been pulling out of China, and you've been there for more than 10 years now, it sounds like. And I guess maybe it's because of this uncertainty around the economy, but that just strikes me as odd that that would be happening right now, especially what you said about this new optimism. Is that true? Have you been seeing that? And do you think that's a trend that's going to continue?
Um, well, let me answer it in two parts. One, is it true? Yes, absolutely. Right. Since 2023, at least seven firms have announced either closure or a combination of their Greater China offices. And these are named firms. These are Deckard, Walgotcha, Oric, Perkins Coie, Latham, Reed Smith, Winston Strawn, and some other large UK firms like Linklaters and Kirkland have announced massive layoffs. Why goes back to the fundamental structure and business model of international firms that are in China. A lot of very large firms went into China with multinationals. And they charge international rates. Their cost basis is international rate cost basis. And a lot of their business got cannibalized by up and coming, very aggressive local Chinese law firms. Now, these Chinese law firms are good Chinese law firms. They're very big, very well educated, and essentially they can practice local Chinese law. So international firms don't have the capability of showing up in court, nor do they have the capability of showing up in the capital markets. They sort of very similar to India and some of the other jurisdictions, the Ministry of Justice is rather protective of the bounds of what international firms could do in China. You cannot literally be in the litigation in China. And so the ability to generate revenue, the ability to service your client is by definition circumscribed. Now, on the other hand, international firms are by definition having a competitive advantage when Chinese conglomerates have to go overseas. And that is what we have focused on, which is we're looking at international companies or local Chinese companies of a certain size that want to go outbound, right? They're investing in the US, they're investing in Europe. And under those circumstances, they will come and work with international firms more because we have a deeper bench overseas. If you're talking with a multinational or even a Chinese company and they need Chinese law service, then by definition, they're better served sometimes if they need a deep bench to be working with local Chinese law firms.
See. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, here in Silicon Valley where I practice, there was a time, up until I guess around 2017 or so, when we saw a lot of inbound, I call it inbound, from China investment. Companies were coming here. In fact, there was a time in my practice, Asia made up 40% of my clients, and I'm in Palo Alto. And then suddenly, like a light switch, it seems to have all stopped. And I used to see a Chinese name on almost every cap table, and now hardly ever. And and I understand it had something to do with exchange controls, something to do with regulation in China. But what is the rule, that's causing so much trouble in Chinese companies investing in individuals investing in the US?
So before 2017, a lot of investment model for Chinese private equity fund is they would invest in the technology innovation in the rest of the world, like in Silicon Valley, in Europe somewhere. And the iteration, so what they call the 0 to 1 in the US and the 1 to 10 in China. So a lot of times you would then have the best of both worlds, be able to say, okay, innovation, the Western world is better at this. And so I'm going to invest in the innovation in the West and then bring it back to China and have the back office where you go to market or you test, fail, and get a product to market quickly and cheaply. In China, where the cost of production, the human cost is much lower. And that model worked for a while until CFIUS and foreign exchange control came into play. CFIUS because there was a hue and cry back in, I can't remember when, but it might be 16 or 17, when suddenly the US government decided that, hey, high technology, right? I don't know, AI startups of the world or the kind of semiconductor startups of the world. We really need to protect it, and we don't want foreign investors, unless they are purely passive investors, to in fact be investing in the US startup scene. And so the CFIUS regulation, where foreign investment is limited, came into play, and essentially that shall we say, either stopped or at least chilled a lot of the startup companies in Silicon Valley from taking Chinese money because they don't want the oversight, they don't want the regulation. The
Mm.
second thing is in 2016, there was a mini financial crisis in China. And because it was a mini financial crisis in China, where debt was becoming a problem, especially a lot of um, local government debt was becoming a problem, there was a massive leakage of money from China overseas. People were trying to kind of move money out to the extent where the central government put their foot down and essentially said, okay, we're not changing the rules, but we are issuing window guidance to all the banks. And the rule in the book is one person, every individual, has a quota of 50,000 US dollars per year that they could purchase and send overseas. But during 2016, the window guidance from up top, PBOC, was look, if they want to send 10,000 US dollars, you could process it bank. But if they want to send $20,000, then you need them to physically come in and bring all evidentiary documents to demonstrate why you want to do this. And if they literally want to send $50,000, at that point, it was almost impossible, right? They don't tell you that that won't work, but they just keep asking for evidence to demonstrate this is legitimate. And so there was a period when getting money overseas was very difficult. Now, as you understand, we've talked about this. China has a foreign exchange control regime. Normal people in China, be it however wealthy they are, cannot really just freely transfer the money overseas any which way they want. And that is the Chinese government regulatory kind of regime to protect their exchange and their foreign reserve. So under those circumstances, if a company or a individual wants to make an investment overseas and they need to buy foreign currency like US dollar, um, it does it does require a lot of steps. And if it is more than, let's say, 50,000, then you need to go through a batch of approval. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it has to be demonstrated legitimate investments.
Mm. Okay, so that's why, so it's a double whammy. It's both US and Chinese regulation that made it just not worth the trouble. How about going the other way? What US companies going into China, what are their biggest challenges or issues if they want to? And I can see how a US company might want to do what you said. They're looking for production, cheap production, or a huge market, or who knows, maybe there's a venture capital industry in China. Maybe they're looking for money too. But what are the challenges that US companies might have in that part of the world?
A lot of people are saying, oh my God, kind of like the FDI, the foreign direct investment in China, seems to have turned negative. And the sentiment for international investors coming into China has weakened, and it's a catastrophe. Yes, the FDI has reduced, and to a certain extent, where it's dipped below, kind of it became negative at one point. But there is still quite a bit of foreign investment coming into China. Um, there, I can't say as a general matter as to what exactly they're all looking for because different enterprises are looking for different things. But China still represents one, a very large consumer market, even though at this point the consumers don't have a lot of confidence. So they really are looking for value. Two, um, they're no longer the cheapest production supply chain. But the thing that they have is a very well thought out supply chain in the sense that if you want to manufacture something, anything, let's say a watch, right? All of the lower level supply for that watch, the band, the interior of the watch, the sapphire case, everything is within China, right? You could get your supplies very easily. You could get the talent to design the watch very easily. You could get the logistics of getting that watch exported and overseas very easily. So the process of designing, manufacturing, and then exporting that, whatever it is, the material, whether it's be it semiconductor, be it an airplane, be it a watch, be it anything else, is very well trod. So after COVID, a lot of multinationals are saying, oh my God, I just realized that my supply chain, which is primarily in China, is very fragile. I must have something else. I must move my supply chain.
Mhm.
And there was, for a period of time, a lot of people rushing into Southeast Asia. They went to Vietnam,
Right.
they went to Thailand,
Mhm.
and they realized that, darn, right? Yes, it is cheaper for labor cost, but the roads are terrible. The port system is terrible. I can manufacture it, but I might not be able to get some of my kind of other supplies that I need to manufacture the darn thing. The labor is not as skilled a labor force as I would want. And after I'm manufacturing it, I can't get it to port, or it takes me much longer than normal to get it to port. So the cost of my logistical supply chain is much higher. So everybody then reverted back to, we're going to still have to have a backup plan, which is Vietnam or Thailand or somewhere in Southeast Asia, but we're keeping most of our manufacturing in China because they realize that manufacturing is not just my plant. Manufacturing is everything else. The road system, the transportation system, the policy that allows for staging areas in the port, right? Where do I pay export tax? And if I could have a great deal of work in progress that is parked at the port and I don't have to pay tax until I find a buyer for it, that's very beneficial for my company's cash flow return. So a lot of other places where you could think of as manufacturing hubs, they have not developed all of that kind of corresponding supporting mechanism. So China has still maintained the crown, shall we say, of being the manufacturing base for a lot of goods around the world.
Okay. So there's still good reason for doing business there. What is the deal market like right now in China?
The deal market is, I would say it in two folds, right? I've said it before, where a lot of people have very low confidence and they're waiting for the central government to kind of signal as to, hey, where are we headed? And so a lot of folks are saying, I won't do a deal until or unless it is such a good deal that I can't afford to miss it. So, one, deal volume is way low.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you've seen multiple papers come out saying, oh my God, the sky's falling for the legal law firm world, both for the Chinese law firm and for the international law firm, where revenue is down. It just took a nosedive. Bank investment banks are screaming bloody murder because they don't get paid until the deal's done and the deal doesn't get done.
Mhm.
Um, but you are starting to see that folks are starting to kind of cut price and try to sell, right? So you're seeing low deal level and the deals that get done. There's a major gap between price expectation of the seller and the buyer. And under those circumstances, deals take longer to get done because they have to kind of close that gap.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, well, we're coming up to the top of the hour here, and I want to thank you. You've kind of hit it at a high level, the big issues. I want to thank you for being with us and talking with us. This is Roger Royce with the 10,000 Startups podcast, and I have been talking with Liza Mark. She is a lawyer with Haynes Boone Shanghai office who does cross-border transactions. So thanks a lot for being here, Lisa, and thank you all for listening. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Roger.